my history in martial arts, what led me to martial arts, what led me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For me, it started with Taekwondo in the early 90s in New York, between the ages of 7 to about 13 years old, 14. I was heavily into Taekwondo. And 93 is when the first UFC came out. So I made my father order it on pay-per-view. 13 years old, and I see the Brazilian guy, Royce Gracie, and I'm like, that's cool. I didn't know Brazilians had their own martial art. Initially, I was rooting for the Taekwondo guy, but once I saw Royce in the UFC, I'm Brazilian from my parents. Both my parents are Brazilian, so I was rooting for Royce. Obviously, I was surprised that he won. And at the time, I remember talking to my father about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At the time, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and asking him about it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, the Gracie's Jiu-Jitsu," as if I would have known about it since I was born and raised in New York. So that was my first time learning about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But after the UFC won, I went back to Taekwondo because at that time, there wasn't any real place to train. So I go through high school, I do the usual sports, basketball, football, handball in New York. And as soon as I graduated, I was into fitness and working out and stuff. And somebody recommended for me to watch Choke, which is the documentary of Hickson. So I went to the Virgin Megastore on 14th Street, which is no longer there. And I wanted to buy the VHS documentary cassette tape. They don't have it on VHS at the time. They only have it on DVD. So I bought it on DVD just so I could have it. So I knocked on my friend's door and I made him play it so I can watch it. And I must have watched it for about the first 6 months before taking my first class. At the time, there was no academy that I knew of for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So one day I see a guy walking down my neighborhood who's Harley Flanagan, who ended up becoming one of Renzo's black belts. And Harley had a Renzo shirt. So he lived in my neighborhood in Queens. So when I saw him walk by, I stopped him. I was like, "Hey man, where is this academy?" At the time, he said, it was on 37th and 8th, which is the old Methadone clinic when it used to be on the second, third floor, and the Renzo used to be on 5th. So I showed up, paid for the month and started training there. I was training there on and off for a couple of months. Then I stopped. And then in 2004, early 2004, I moved to Brazil and I stayed there for about 2 years. And that's when I started training under Carlos Gracie Jr. And that's where I earned my blue belt, before coming back to New York at the end of 2005, beginning of 2006. I was a huge fan of Marcelo before I even met Marcelo. And after I met Marcelo, I became a bigger fan of his. And I feel like, to continue the story of where my jiu-jitsu went, so I earned my blue belt in 2004 under Carlos Gracie Jr. And I came back to New York the end of 2005, beginning of 2006. And I didn't have a good structure. I wasn't in the right place in my life. And I tried going back to Renzo's and it just didn't fit for me at the time. And I ended up linking up with Marcos Santos, who was an Egan Machado black belt, and he was teaching in New York for about almost 2 decades up until that point. Marcos, in 2008, took me under his wing, started training under him. And in February 28th, 2009, Marcelo at the time was living in Florida. He came up to New York and taught a 2-day seminar, February 28th and March 1st, 2009. At the end of the first day of the Saturday seminar, I rolled with Marcelo as blue belt. After that, they ended the seminar and Marcos gave me my purple belt. Marcelo goes back to Florida. In the spring of 2009, Marcos pulls me to the side and says that, he's closing the school and that Marcelo's going to come up to New York, open his own school, basically absorb Marcos Santos' school, create Marcelo's new school. And basically, I felt like the planets aligned themselves for me. I was just at the right place at the right time. So on October 21st, 2009, I helped Marcos Santos close his academy, ripped the wall pads down, rolled up all the mats, loaded up the truck. I brought it to his, he had a warehouse in Newark, brought it there before he moved to Texas. He'd lend me his car so I could drive to my sister's house in Hackensack, grab my Nogi stuff, just so I could make it for the first advanced class on October 22nd, 2009 at the old school at Marcelo's. I started training with Marcelo in August 2009, but officially when the school opened on October 22nd is when I stayed. I was 100% under Marcelo. And Marcelo is one of the greatest competitors of all time. And in a way, I feel like he's almost a greater influencer. He's somebody that I remember in the middle of his training camp. This is before he got his location, before he was still looking for the right location. He had to train a couple of times just for the 2009 Abu Dhabi, Barcelona. And he had a bunch of purple belts and blue belts from Marcos's. I was one of them to help him train for the 2009 Abu Dhabi in Barcelona. And one day in the middle of the training session, Marcelo stops it. He's like, guys, come in. And he's like, I know you guys are trying to help me get ready, but I see you guys resting between rounds, and I want you guys to go hard too. This is for you too. So this is a guy who's looking for his academy. He's getting ready to defend his title, in Barcelona, and he's still worried about the people who officially, technically, not all his students. They're just people that are helping him, mixed in with some of his students, right? So I thought that was just like, wow, like he's. So then when Marcelo opened in October 22nd, 2009, I just started doing as much as I can. And anytime I didn't know what to do, I would go to Marcelo, this happened, is this the right thing to do? Or if I did something, I go to Marcelo and be like, this is what I did, and he'll give me his advice. So I would learn how to be diplomatic, how to help run the school, how to deal with people. Because as you know, Jiu-Jitsu is like a microcosm of the world. So we have so many different people from different walks of life, bad and good, And one of the most fulfilling things that I feel as a student of Marcelo, first and foremost, and helping them run the school and seeing the school grow, is when we see students come and they may have issues, problems, personal things, and they come here and you see them, not adapting well and having a hard time. And if we're able to help them change, get better behaviors, become a contributor to the academy, and then on the other side of that, years go by and then they earn their black belt, you're like, wow, I've seen that person transform, how I've experienced it in my own life. And Marcelo, he's great at that. He's somebody that whatever he did that led him to become a world champion, not one time, not two times, not three times, but 9 times. He continues to this day to do those things that led him here. So he doesn't just live today on his name alone. He lives today by working every day to continue that legacy.
He already connected his hand. I couldn't do this. I couldn't break. Instead of just fight against his elbow, against his arm, I lock very close to his wrist. I do almost like a rear neck choke, and then just start leaning forward. Instead of go to his head, I go towards his. Once you get in there, you can even hug again, just go one more time. And the reason why I switch arm, because I want to put the arm that's close to his leg. It's just isolated. I don't want to put his arm over here, and they end up kind of like he falls there. So I don't want to fall towards this side. I want to fall towards his leg. So I put his arm under my feet, locking on his wrist. Maybe you guys not realize that, but you're gonna feel a lot of like it's almost like it's gonna cut like your arm off. You're gonna feel like you just squeeze your forearm, the muscle on your forearm. It's gonna be very painful. That's one of those things that's gonna help also. You're gonna be stronger, but if you try to resist, it's just gonna force too much against it's not just your wrist. When you get like a bicep slice, you're gonna feel on your forearm now. So just be careful with this. Then follow it. If it was on the other side, I'm sorry. If it was on the other side, I got over here, I fall. I always put on the arm that's close to his leg. And then I got a hold from his forearm and not his elbow. And then I just fall. There one more time. And the arm always close to his leg. That's the try, guys.
So wherever Marcelo is, and the expansion of Marcelo's brand is where I see myself. Not to say that's today, and that's what it's been for 10 years for me. But I've never been, for myself personally, felt like I want to earn my black belt so then I could go to a place in the States or a place in New York or New Jersey and open up my own school and have my own students. I do feel that I have students here, who I help, who I teach, but it's always under the umbrella of Marcelo. And that's where I feel the best. That's where I feel best utilized. That's where I feel I can maximize my skills and where I could have the greater effect and I can reach the most people.
Once I have his hand, now I can really go and the arm will come out. But I have to make sure I don't have the hook under his arm. I cannot switch too much. Just go and then just that you find his hand so you can pull from his hand. Keep everything tight, just go right on his hand. I'm sure you feel a strong leverage on his hand right now. But we cannot move if his arm is just tucking. You can pull his elbow, go over there. I found his hand, and that's what I'm going for. So now let's go to the arm bar, but the other person is going to get hold of his whole triceps and elbow, everything like this. And we're gonna go on the hand that you're looking for. Let's go try, guys. Thank you.
The half guard is a very typical position. It's a very common position, be it in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA. So I don't think anyone really gets a game till maybe around purple belt. I think when you're going from white to blue, you should be experimenting. You should be a lot of trial and error. And to this day, I explore still. I still experiment, but I have a style. So I feel like somebody coming up in Jiu-Jitsu, as a guard player, you don't need to be an expert or a master at all the guards. I think you should have 2 go-to guards, maybe 3, that you're super proficient in and you could consider yourself almost an expert in, that you understand the ins and outs of that guard. But when it comes to passing, you have to know all the guards because you have to identify all the obstacles that are in the way, the problematic grips, what needs to off-base you so you can navigate yourself to passing your guards. So I developed my half guard at purple belt. I think in the beginning, like everyone else, like I came from at the time when I started training jiu-jitsu around 2002, seriously, I feel like there was no like real sport jiu-jitsu. It was like you did jiu-jitsu and then you would fight MMA. At the time was no holds barred or vale tudo. So I would get VHS pride tapes and watch, Ryan Gracie, Henzo. I'd watch Minotauro, Murilo Bustamante, Fabio Gugel. And I kind of always trained as if I was going in MMA. Like, so my half guard was always like, okay, close to the hip. If, I have my free hand as a protect my face in case there are strikes. And I started playing a lot of close guard. And then somewhere around purple belt, I felt like because it was such a common position, and what happens is when I started training Marcelo's such a great half guard passer. So he created an academy where you have so many high-level world-class athletes that are great at breaking down the half guard. So part to answer your question is me being my physical attributes. I inclined to play half guard, and I was also forced to play half guard. So I embraced it. And somebody that plays half guard, they have to suffer. So I kind of signed the waiver for the half guard saying, okay, I'm going to get smashed. My face is going to get crushed. I'm going to be put in really bad spots. But if I can endure that, and if I can take it, when I get on top, I'll pay it forward. When I get to my position, I'm not going to go back. So I'm a grinder, but I would classify myself more as a strategic grinder, where there might be a lot of chaos, things are going, and I got that from competition where it's very loud, everything's happening so very fast, where I had to figure out, scramble, okay, this is my spot. Okay, now I don't go back. Now I have to look for the finish. So to answer your question, I enjoyed the half guard, and I was also forced to play half guard. Oh man, I love scrambling. I remember, around the tap out days, and you had affliction, and like early 2006, 7, and 8. Jiu-jitsu, it was kind of corny. It got corny, And I remember talking to somebody, and they mentioned scramble, and I was like, I think they showed me a picture of a hoodie. I was like, man, that is dope. Let me go check. I was like, man, this is in pounds? Let me do the math. I was like, all right, I got to wait till I get my income tax check at the end of the year, and I'll get some spats. I want those rainbow spats. I want those shorts. I remember the water rash guard, the original one. And I started to just, buy their stuff as, when I could afford it. And I remember they did a thing for the victims of the tsunami in Japan, and I bought one of their shirts, and I got Marcelo a shirt too. And I always enjoyed working with them, be it as helping them when I could if they needed some help. And then around 2014, and I was competing, and I was finding my lane, and I realized what I had to contribute to jiu-jitsu. Because even at brown belt, I was in my mid-30s, so I was like, okay, I'm not a 20-year-old, I'm not a high-flying phenom, but at the same time, I felt like I had something to contribute, and I found my niche. So I think what happened at brown belt, as I stayed working hard and I stayed learning from Marcelo, and I stayed understanding how to contribute to jiu-jitsu, I realized my value. And I was fortunate enough to work with Matt and Ben that they saw value in me. And in 2014, at Brown Belt, I earned my sponsorship from Scramble, and I've never looked back. I look forward each year to help their brand grow, and they are always invested in me. And ultimately, they're just good friends of mine. So, like, anytime they're in New York or anytime Matt or Ben send me a message, I try to do as much as I can for them. Their company and their brand is something I believed in, and it's been a great partnership, and I don't need a contract or anything. I don't need, his word and my word was good enough, in 2014, and I never looked back. And they know in me, they're going to get somebody that will try their best to be a good ambassador that wants to help grow the sport in the right direction. So I feel like it was a good exchange, especially with my presence here at the academy. There are numerous benefits into competing. Um, I competed a handful of times before I became Marcelo's student. And then once I was at Purple Belt, and I think I was about a year training under Marcelo, the academy, when, like, let's say the New York Open or the Nogi Pants comes to New York, the academy closes for all the IBJJF local tournaments. So I naturally just thought, I was like, okay, I'm going to compete. Marcelo never forced me to compete. Marcelo doesn't force anyone to compete. Marcelo just gives you the tools and what you need to succeed in competing. Now, a lot of times I could wake up the day of the competition and I feel great. My nerves are settled. I'm fine. And I show up and I compete and I lose. There's times I wake up and I'm not 100%. I feel a little bit off. Or something happened at the competition that threw me off, and then I win. So I can never control the result. I can only control the effort. And then what I realized is, I had a lot of setbacks at Purple Belt. And then when I earned my Brown Belt, I started gaining more success at Brown Belt. And then what I realized with competing is this. In training, you make mistakes, right? Be it sometimes you don't know and your training partner is better than you and they exploit it. Or, you're having an off day and something bad happens and you get tapped or your go-to guard got passed. Whatever mistake that led for that happening, you're going to forget in a week or two, maybe a month. No matter what stage that you compete in, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, or black belt, whatever you do, whatever mistake costs you to go to the finals, whatever mistake costs you the finals, you'll never forget. It's going to be ingrained in your memory. And then I feel that as a student of jiu-jitsu, once you have those mistakes, you go back to the academy, you go back to your instructor with good questions. Say, hey, this is what happened. And then you go back to the academy and you fix it. So then when you go compete again, you address the issue. And that's how you get better. So I find that helps in the growth. And also the stress, right? So you put the noise, you put something on the line, you put your friends, your family, your teammates are all watching you, right? Jiu-Jitsu is a team sport. You need to have a team around you just for you to succeed. But when you go out there, it's just you. So I find that as a sport, it fulfills a lot of different things, right? So you still have the team atmosphere. As you see with Marcelo's academy, when we go compete, we try to have a coach in every match for every student, no matter what their belt rank is. And then when I'm coaching somebody, if they lose, I try to give them the best advice I can so they can come back to the academy and fix it. And if they win, we celebrate with them. I enjoyed the highs and I lived through the lows, but ultimately I feel like for my style of jiu-jitsu, competing has been a great tool for me to achieve what I achieved. I try to train as consistently as possible. When I was between purple and brown belt and up until the time I earned my black belt in 2015, my average training workload would be 5 to 6 days a week. Now I try to do a minimal of 3, a maximum of 5. There's a lot of work that takes into running the academy. I help run the academy with Hannah and Scott and the rest of the guys that are helping with the facility side of it. As you look around, we're under construction. So at the floor that we have now, we had half the floor with the hallway. Now we have the entire floor. There's no hallway. We're expanding. Bigger men's locker room, bigger mat space. So the academy needs more from me, so I have to do more. So I try to work as hard as I can, fulfill my responsibilities, working, while I'm still training and learning how to be a better training partner and teacher under Marcelo. I think, as anything, the sport is growing, it's evolving. Um, I remember when I spoke to Grandmaster Francisco Mansour when he did a seminar, Marcus. Um, he said that when they did the rules meeting for the first, you know, um, federation, that there was something like 7 sweeps. Now there's hundreds, right? Um, so I find that growth is good, the evolution is good, exposure is good. The more jiu-jitsu doesn't become a niche sport, like you want it to be, into the general public. I feel that, when you look at somebody like Gordon Ryan, who I saw coming up, I started watching him at purple belt and, brown belt, and then when he earned his black belt, and, he's super talented, super high level. Unfortunately, I feel that the message that gets sent, or what I feel that gets promoted, isn't something I subscribe to. Um, so in one hand, like, you have great technique, right? You have a great performance, and on the other hand, in a blink of an eye, you have a foul gesture. You have something that could off-put somebody, you know. And I feel that, for me personally, my investment and the environment that I feel that is conducive to a healthy way of expanding jiu-jitsu is Marcelo's jiu-jitsu. And not just his techniques, because I feel like Marcelo's techniques are timeless, but it's the way Marcelo carries himself. And that's something that I'm a part of, and that's something that I will be a part of while there's still air in my lungs. And that's the message I want to, be a part of, is, you know, you can recognize somebody's technique, you can recognize somebody's skill, but it's not just that, like, I feel, after time, like, maybe it's kind of corny, but it's kind of like when you go through things in life, you may not remember, a certain event as much as you remember how you felt, how somebody made you feel, so, as humans, as, somebody that's trying to be a good person, and, just want to do more good in this world, because there's a lot of ugliness, there's a lot of war, there's a lot of nonsense, there's a lot of political drama, there's a lot of, unrest. And I feel that something like jiu-jitsu, what people can do that can help them, escape, help them feel good, and it puts people close together. I think the more you make people feel good, the more you carry yourself the right way. Like, if I, have a son or a daughter, or for my nieces today, I don't want them to think that to act vulgar or to carry themselves in a way that's not appropriate is something that is good. So, to each their own. I think the beauty of jiu-jitsu is that you have different, like, you have, alliance jiu-jitsu, you have Atos jiu-jitsu, you have unity jiu-jitsu, you have Henzo jiu-jitsu, right? You have Gracie jiu-jitsu. It's great. I look at it like wrestling, like Penn State, Iowa, the Hawkeyes, like, you have all these different great academies, like colleges. So the message that I would try to send to people is, if you really love jiu-jitsu, do it. Try to be part of a place that is able to give you something good on and off the mats. And a good indicator for me is this: if you can bring your father, your mother, your son or daughter to the academy, and they can watch a whole training session, and they could be around your teammates and your instructor, and everything's okay, you have a good academy.